Hello there. Welcome in to a Tuesday edition of the show. Yes, today also is known by another name. So to those of you who are getting ready to celebrate the big day tomorrow, hopefully today is as stress-free as it possibly could be. And I don't know if I'm going to add to the stress or not. I'll let you be the judge. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio as you're picking up those last minute gifts, whether it's online or through the Extra Sports 1300 app sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. And yes, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this Christmas Eve. 719-247-1313. Let's start with the Nuggets, shall we? And we've only just begun. You realize this, yes? Because tomorrow, in many people's eyes, is the actual start of the NBA season. They don't pay a lot of attention to what goes on before tomorrow's extravaganza, which includes the Denver Nuggets. You and I are different. You and I have been on this wild Nuggets ride since day one. And if tomorrow's the unofficial start of the NBA season, the Nuggets certainly went into it on a high note, beating down the Phoenix Suns, their opponent coincidentally tomorrow, but the scene will shift to Phoenix. I don't know that what has happened up until this point could be discounted and it's just, let's start fresh tomorrow. No, what's happened is significant. Certainly the stakes will go up from here. But the biggest thing that stuck out to me last night, and there were surprisingly for a game that was probably missed by a lot of people who were trying to finish up their shopping. The biggest thing to me is Michael Porter. You know, I talked about him yesterday, and I wondered aloud whether some of the trade rumors were bothering him. Because I got to imagine that it is not great to hear your name thrown around in that regard, as much as players and Michael Porter said this last night. It's part of the business, but it's a tough part of the business. You know, we could say, well, they're millionaires, they'll be fine. And to a large degree, they will be. But to the idea that you're going to move, the idea, and it's everything that comes along with it. It's just not the professional part of this of, hey, where am I going to be living and doing my job? It's, well, what does this say about me? Right? Does it mean that they don't want me? Does it mean I'm the problem here? I got to imagine some of those thoughts run through guys' heads when they hear their name mentioned in trade rooms. And I said it would be weird if that was the case because of everything Michael Porter went through last year. His brother was getting kicked out of the league, was facing criminal charges. I mean, you want to talk about a distraction. You want to talk about a reason to have your mind somewhere else than on your job. That would be it. And Michael Porter did extremely well through that. He didn't avoid it. He talked about it. He played through it, and he played well through it. So it would be even though some of those thoughts may enter his head, once he steps on the basketball court, I would be a little bit surprised if he let that bother him. Well, his performance last night kind of put that all to rest because he was great. No Jamal Murray last night. So the Nuggets needed somebody to step up, and they got a lot of somebodies to step up, even some unlikely players to step up, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Michael Porter right there alongside Nikola Jokic, who was his normal dominant self, had 37 points, and he sat the entire fourth quarter. You want to talk about a great Christmas gift? Nikola Jokic sitting for an entire quarter, and the Nuggets not even sweating it. Michael Malone not even starting to glance down the bench like, do I put him back in? Do I not? That never entered his thought process. That's how comfortable the Nuggets were last night. And to think that Jokic did what he did last night in 3 quarters, what does he have in store for tomorrow if tomorrow's going to be a little bit closer contested than last night was? But the guy that rode a shotgun right along with him was Michael Porter. And I mentioned that no Jamal Murray last night, and I'm glad to see that the Nuggets treated his rolled ankle the other night against New Orleans with an abundance of caution. I don't think it was load management last night, but hey, if he picks up any slight nick or cut, keep him out. Keep him out. Michael Porter was asked if anything changes for him when Jamal Murray is out.
I guess it is a difference of a role, probably being more like the second option offensively and just trying to be aggressive, trying to, taking a little tougher shots, looking for my shot a little more, looking to be aggressive, coming to the ball a little bit more. Then when we have Jamal out there, I think kind of, that two-man game is a very like high frequency thing that we do. So maybe a little bit less aggressively, like coming to the ball. But I think when he's out, I try to just go into the game mentally knowing, a lot of those cuts that I may have backdoored or made whatever, come get the ball and then go from there. So maybe it's a little bit different of a mentality.
But in that, it's a lot different. Now, I don't want to completely blow this out of proportion. Michael Porter's numbers, scoring numbers, or you could really look across the board. It's not a huge difference. Right? Michael Porter averages about 17 points with Jamal Murray in the lineup. He averages 20 without. So we're not talking about a world of difference here with Michael Porter Jr. in terms of his numbers. But what he's talking about there is a significant difference in his role. And it's a difference in his role, but it's a difference in the team. To his point about the two-man game, it takes up so much, like they go to it in some games midway through the fourth quarter. And that's not a lot of touches for everyone else. So, yeah, Michael Porter's role changes, and he slides one over in the pecking order, and he's who the Nuggets look to other than Nikola Jokic to generate offense. But it's a cascading effect because Michael Porter's scoring average may go up 3 because he attempts 3 more shots. But then Gordon attempts a few more shots, and Christian Brown attempts a few more shots, and then maybe Russell Westbrook gets to take some more shots. It's a very different team when Jamal Murray's not in there. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. And in fact, the best of the Denver Nuggets was with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic running that two-man game to death throughout the postseason 2 years ago. So if I had to lean one way, I would take Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic running the two-man game at full strength over any other iteration of the Denver Nuggets. But Porter becomes the second option. Now Gordon becomes the third option. Brown becomes and everybody slides up and everybody gets more shots. As much as the idea of the two-man game is they're sharing the ball, but they're sharing the ball back and forth. And maybe one finds its way out to Michael Porter, or maybe one from that dunker spot finds its way to Aaron Gordon. It's not Jamal Murray who's ball dominant. It's Jokic and Murray who are ball dominant when they're running that two-man game. It's like this. At times, you don't even notice that anybody else exists on the court. So while Porter's numbers may not change, it very much changes who the Denver Nuggets are and the way they play. It's much more share the wealth. It's much more evenly distributed than when Jamal Murray is on the court. But I was thinking about this. I'll play you a clip from Michael Porter, who was asked if the front office reached out to him about the free agent rumors, and I'll give you my thoughts on the other side.
They've reached out to me and said, it's all noise. There's nothing serious going on. And if there was, they would let me know. And they've said they love how I'm playing and to keep being aggressive, keep playing. And they have no desire to move me right now. But I also know that, they wouldn't tell me if they wanted to move me, you know what I mean? So, but they have reached out, yeah.
These trade rumors, the player coming back to Denver in a lot of these are more ball dominant players, right? Brandon Ingram, even Zach LaVine, like these are guys that want the ball. These are guys that hang on to the ball. The reason why the Nuggets signed up Michael Porter is because he fits in so well with what the Nuggets have done. And I've talked about this before, right? This core four complements each other so well, and why I would be very hesitant to move any of them as long as Jamal Murray is healthy and right. But that doesn't mean that Michael Porter can't be a more ball dominant player. I was thinking about the other side of these trade rumors, listening to Michael Porter talk last night. And it goes back to the difference of role and everything. Like, I would understand why Michael Porter would be appealing to a lot of teams, because they have to look at Michael Porter and say, look, if we bring him here and we make him our second option, or let's take Chicago, our number one option, like, what could Porter do? And there's always that thought of, hey, if you're not playing with Nikola Jokic, how are you going to look? And we've seen players play with Jokic and go elsewhere and haven't had nearly the success. And it's part of what you have to weigh if you're considering bringing in Michael Porter. But you see it in a game like last night. He's not the third option because he's incapable of doing more. He's the third option because that's how good the Nuggets' top two are when Jamal Murray is right and healthy. So I think just sometimes the point of this is sometimes people take the role that Michael Porter plays when the Nuggets are at full strength and say that's what he is. But I think Michael Porter is capable of more than what he shows on the Denver Nuggets. And I don't know if these trade rumors are going to end up going anywhere. But I wonder a little bit, not that I'm in the business of looking at it from other teams' perspectives or looking at it from Michael Porter leaving the Denver Nuggets perspective. I wonder if he feels like sometimes I could do more. Like, put me on, now, admittedly, probably not as good of a basketball team, but give me a bigger role and I can do more. I got to imagine that creeps into his head every once in a while. And there was a moment last night where he kind of alluded to that a little bit, like kind of some generic throwaway line of thoughts run through your head, and they immediately went in another direction with it. I don't think Michael Porter is unhappy playing in Denver or anything like that. I don't want to go down that road. But it's just funny to me that all this talk about, oh, the Nuggets need to get rid of Michael Porter and get something better. And it's like you could almost say the same thing from Michael Porter's perspective. Like there is a role that's better for him out there where he can do more. He could do what he did last night and do it on a consistent basis. Because Michael Porter's talent was never in question. I mean, if you talk about, well, Michael Porter product, he's not a product of Nikola Jokic. Like maybe his numbers go up a little bit because he plays with Jokic. But this was a guy that was viewed without the injury concerns as a franchise-altering player. Without the injuries, he would have been taken in front of Trae Young, in front of Luka Doncic. He would have been the first guy taken undoubtedly. And just all this talk about, are the Nuggets better off with Michael Porter? Maybe the better question is, would Michael Porter be somewhat better off without the Denver Nuggets? I think it's equal, right? I think that both sides through all of this kind of need to realize that they're in a good spot. Nuggets are in a good spot with Michael Porter. Michael Porter's in a good spot with the Nuggets. For Porter, maybe the grass isn't greener, but for the Denver Nuggets, again, I go back to who you going to get that actually is better than Michael Porter and fits in better. Just another side to these trade talks. It gets so one-sided. It's all about the Nuggets. Would they be better off? And I was thinking last night, Porter could probably do what he did last night on a lot of teams. But yet the Nuggets get this guy that not only can do that on occasion when need be, but can fit in so well when they are at full strength. But good Nuggets win last night, and they'll play the same team this time in Phoenix tomorrow, and we'll see if Nikola Jokic has to play in the fourth quarter in that one. 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Christmas Eve edition of the show. Coming up next, Sean Payton spoke today in advance of the Broncos' big matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals and why the Broncos would be wise to not push their luck into Week 18. I was going to do something with the music. I was late on that. Because I have been accused in the past of maybe not being the most jolly for this or really any holiday. So I wanted to prove to you that I can get in the spirit with music that reflects the day. And so we'll get to that in the next segment. How about that? Hearing from some of you, very nice of you to reach out from the 719. Happy Festivus, Kaufman. It's not just one big day for grievance, it's many. Oh, hush. See, this is what happens when I try to do something. Now we got Rich Eisen bleeding through, and see, it's just a whole mess. Never again will I try to do anything festive. This is what happens. The entire system crashes, and anyway. Happy Festivus, Kaufman, which is a holiday I can certainly get behind. I identify with Frank Costanza. And I've been asked by a few people on this, and since you're nice enough to listen to me on a day like today, I'll go ahead and talk about this a little bit. I've been asked about our programming plans given this new change. Apparently, Jim Rome's been talking about it. That's the sense I'm getting. Jim Rome is not leaving the station. Essentially, for your purposes, he and Rich Eisen are flip-flopping. That move was announced. It's not a move that I was consulted on or had any say on. It was done above us. But they will be flip-flopping. They'll both remain on the station. So you'll hear starting not this coming Monday, but the following Monday, you'll hear Rich Eisen right after Dan Patrick at 10, and then you'll hear Jim Rome leading up to this show at 3. So that's the thing. They did the swap, so we're going to do the swap, but that's what it's going to be. I'm still going to come on at 3 o'clock. Jim Rome will be from 1 to 3, and Rich Eisen from 10 to 1. That's when they air live, when those shows air. So that is what's going to be happening here in week and a half. Gotten a few texts on it. So there we go. Speaking of holidays, the Broncos obviously want just one thing for this holiday, and that is win number 10. Here's Sean Payton.
I put a note. We got to get to 10. That's the first thing. We got to get to 10. Let's focus on that. And all our preparation, everything we do. Cortland just said it best. We put ourselves in this position. Let's take advantage of it.
Yeah, they've put themselves in position to take care of their own business. What happened against the Chargers happened against the Chargers. It is what it is. Right? It was always going to be about this game. When the Broncos were in the bye week and we had a chance to kind of look ahead, it was Indy and it was Cincinnati. Not only were they games that would be of the most consequence to the Denver Broncos, but there were also the teams that you identified in these last 4 that are the most likely Broncos victories. The Broncos all season long have been beating teams like the Cincinnati Bengals. And now they have a chance to do it. And take care of their own business, not back into the postseason, not leave it up to tiebreakers. They just take care of it, 10 wins, boom, it's done. That should be where the Broncos' mindset is right now. And that was a question about, hey, what about some of these other games where you're telling your team? Sean Payton doesn't need to tell his team anything. If they lose on Saturday, that's when a discussion has to be had. And I've started to look at that, and it doesn't. It gets incredibly convoluted, and the Broncos would need, from my calculations, would need the Steelers to beat the Bengals, which is entirely possible. But it's not something you want to bank on. And I was having a conversation with somebody about this today because there's a lot of hand-wringing over the potential that they lose on Saturday and have to beat Kansas City. I actually don't think it's that much about who they play. Because a lot of people are talking about, tomorrow root for Kansas City. It's going to be weird, but you got to root for Kansas City because they lock up the number 1 seed. And if the Broncos happen to lose, then they'll face Carson Wentz and yada, yada, yada. To me, it's not nearly as much about that as it is the fact that the Broncos put together this plan. Right? They did all this work and they had an opportunity to take some additional time to prepare for the Bengals. They took it. And if they squander this, I actually don't think that it matters nearly as much as people want to make it out to be who the Broncos will play. Like, yes, if they were playing the Raiders week 18, it might feel better, but don't you recall? It wasn't that long ago that the Broncos were on the cusp of the playoffs, needing a win against the Raiders. And I believe it was in Denver that Derek Carr and company came in and ruined the Broncos season. Yeah, there are teams that you would rather face week 18 than Kansas City. But to me, if the Broncos lose, their biggest opponent next week is themselves. What we have found out about this Broncos team this year is that there is still a step to go, and the step is beating good teams, but that comes from, having success. The fact of the matter is this team has had very little success. This is some of the most success any of them have ever had at the NFL level. And so to put them in a situation where they must win, like it's win or go home potentially, that's uncharted territory for this Broncos team, as is being on the cusp of a playoff spot. So this weekend is uncharted territory. But there's the additional stress and consequence of if you lose week 18, you're done. And I don't know how the NFL is going to schedule the games, nor do the Broncos. And if they were smart, they'd take a cue from English Premier League soccer and they'd put the games that matter to one another all in the same window. I don't know logistically with the time zones and everything like that, if that's possible. But if I'm the NFL, I'm trying as hard as I can. If this thing is going to come down to Cincinnati, Indy, Miami, and Denver, if Indy and Miami win, if Cincinnati beats Denver, all of those teams will be still alive. I would put as many of them in the same window as I could. So there's a chance that the Broncos take the field in week 18 and have no idea whether they got the help that they need. We haven't seen this team in that kind of situation. I wouldn't like it very much. So it's not about Kansas City, how motivated they are. Is it going to be Carson Wentz or Patrick Mahomes? How many guys are they going to be resting? There are a lot of teams in the NFL that you could put against the Denver Broncos in that situation, and I wouldn't like it. The Broncos did all of this work. They can't let it come down to week 18 and maybe some help from another team. They have a chance on Saturday to clinch and not even worry about everybody else and make week 18 a casual Sunday or Saturday playing football. Maybe some seedings on the line, but at this point, what does it really matter what seed the Broncos? Whether it's 6, 7, probably doesn't matter that much. The Broncos should be focused on getting to 10. They've earned the right to clinch and not have to worry about these insane tie-breaking scenarios that go 4, 5, 6 criteria deep. This is what they were gearing up for. That this game, with additional rest to prepare for it, rest and preparation time, that they would have their destiny in their own hands. And to squander it and to go into week 18, that would be a borderline terrifying scenario. And I don't care if it's Kansas City or the Raiders that they're going up against. Get to 10. And everything else will take care of itself. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Get it, Ryan Kaufman getting into the Christmas spirit. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Coming up on Saturday, the Colorado Buffaloes are playing BYU in the Alamo Bowl. And again, I don't love the matchup. I would like it much more if it was, well, Miami was what I had in my head. I wanted to see the Buffs take on Miami. But just, I didn't need a Big 12 consolation, but we'll take it. Just in case you were curious of what the Buffs were going down to Texas to do, Deion Sanders set the record straight.
The purpose is to win the game. It's like the main course. The appetizers and all the other stuff. So we're happy to go through what we need to go through to get to what we need to get to. But the young men know what we're here for. We're not here for the festivities. We're not here for all the other things, the tangibles. We're here to win this football game.
And it is refreshing in today's day and age of college football that there is a team, and I'm sure there are others, but a team like the Colorado Buffaloes and a coach like Deion Sanders that is placing the type of importance that he is on the bowl game, that is treating it this way. Because at the end of the day, they are pretty much exhibitions. But you get out of a bowl game what you put into it. And it seems like the Buffs are putting a lot into this. Now, something that Deion Sanders did to kind of incentivize in a way or ensure that his soon-to-be NFL players that are on his roster, most notably Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, do participate. Apparently, they're covering them. They took out insurance on these guys, right? The big argument is if I'm getting ready for the NFL draft, why would I play in this exhibition and risk that? Well, Deion Sanders is taking out a policy for his NFL players. Now, I would suggest that more teams try to do this. Not all of them have a head coach who has an endorsement deal with Aflac, which if I know Aflac, I have not been a customer before, but I believe that the whole premise of Aflac is exactly what would happen if one of these NFL bound players were to injure himself, right? If you're not able to work, then it helps you pay bills and things like that. Isn't that what Aflac is for? So I do think there's a practical purpose to it. I know that anytime Deion Sanders does anything, it seems like a publicity stunt. It can be two things, right? It can be legitimately looking out for his players and trying to do something to help ensure that they will play in a bowl game that he and Colorado feels is very important, and also give a shout to Aflac along the way. You can accomplish two things. Now, does Aflac pay out millions of dollars? I don't know. But I'm not trying to make Deion Sanders into a saint here, but I'm also saying, like, it's a nice gesture. Maybe that's the way I would put it. It's a nice gesture to say, hey, if something were to happen, not catastrophic, but if something were to happen, we took out a policy. Maybe more teams should do that. I mean, so many programs in college football are taking what Deion Sanders does anyway. Remember all that talk when he came in about how much he would change college football or how nobody is going to, it was either he's going to completely change college football or no one is going to pay attention to anything he does and want to mimic it. Well, the truth, as always, is somewhere in the middle. Do you see who Norfolk State just hired as their head coach? Michael Vick. There are going to be more and more programs that will look for a name with brand recognition that can bring some juice to the program, help recruit, help generate NIL funds, and hopefully attract some high-level assistant coaches. Because that's the thing here. Like, I see what Norfolk State is doing, and I know that other teams are going to mimic. They didn't want to admit that they were going to look to CU as some sort of blueprint or anything like that, but plenty of programs are. Plenty of programs are taking what Deion Sanders has done at CU and are implementing them. The idea that he invented going into the transfer portal. Bill Belichick, I heard the other day when he was introduced as the head coach of North Carolina, talk about how, you know, they're not going to go, I don't know if he said it in as many words, but the idea that they're not going to go as deep into recruiting because of the transfer portal. Who said that? I heard somebody say that before. And right, the whole knock on Deion Sanders, well, he's not going into anybody's living room in recruiting. Well, it seems like many of the new head coaches aren't doing that they're going to rely on the transfer portal. So it's not to say that he's going to completely revolutionize college football and be looked at as some kind of a great pioneer, but to say that people aren't noticing what he's doing at CU and are taking their cues from him is shortchanging him. And what happened with Norfolk State the other day is a perfect example. But here's the catch, and you know this. Tell me what level of football Michael Vick coached. Because we were having questions about asking questions whether Deion Sanders could translate the success he had at Jackson State to big-time college football. That was a Division I football program. And we were questioning whether that success would translate. So, and I get it's Norfolk State. They gotta start somewhere. But that's what's unique about Deion Sanders is not only did he have these ideas that may be worth implementing into programs, and certainly the cachet he brought CU and the attention and everything like that, other programs would like to replicate. But let's not forget that he was very successful at the level of college football that he coached. And also, let's not forget that after a little bit of tinkering, he finally found a group of assistants that could help. I mean, Deion Sanders has matured as a coach or improved as a coach, certainly, but let's not forget to credit Pat Shurmur, which is a wild thing to say given we all saw him as the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos not that long ago. But Pat Shurmur and Livingston as well. So if you're Norfolk State, if you're any other program that wants to try and replicate what Deion Sanders is doing at CU and to try and do some of the same things to elevate your program, that is maybe bordering on irrelevant. Just know that Deion Sanders had success as a coach before he got to CU. There was trial and error. He had to go through a few different coaches in a short amount of time to find the right combination. But we're going to see more of this. Norfolk State is just the beginning. And even Belichick, in a way, is a little bit of a nod to what Deion Sanders is doing at CU. I mean, Bill Belichick is twice the coach Deion Sanders is from an X's and O's perspective, but to energize a program, to energize donors, to bring the program cachet, you don't think that played into it? The decision to hire Bill Belichick? So I don't know if we look up in 10 years and see that everyone is copying what CU is doing, but you're going to be able to find plenty of examples of programs who are mimicking what Deion Sanders has done at CU. And imagine if he has success, like ultimate success. Imagine if he's in the college football playoff next year or wins a national title in Boulder. Then you'll have many more programs that try and take a cue from Deion Sanders. And maybe trying to do some things to ensure that players play in bowl games. I'm sure Aflac has a competitor. Find them. Get them to cover your players. But I don't love the matchup, but I love the mentality that Deion Sanders and the Buffs are taking into it. Here's the other part of this game on Saturday, though. Make no mistake about it. The Buffs are going down there to put on a show. Now, BYU is going to have something to say about that. Right? BYU is a good team. Me not liking the matchup has nothing to do with the quality of opponent. They're playing a quality opponent, no doubt about it. It's just, even though we haven't seen BYU and CU, it feels like we've seen it before. I don't know, just because they're in the same conference. I can't fully explain why I don't like it. I just don't like it. But BYU is going to try to say something about this. But I think that Deion Sanders, and I'm not talking necessarily just about Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, although they will be the headline acts. And I'm sure that cementing their places as the top two picks, or at least the top pick and the first non-quarterback taken in April's draft, will be part of this. But watch some of the guys down the roster. Some of these juniors and seniors, some of these wide receivers. We have seen Deion Sanders before, not necessarily running up the score, but just with a game plan of let's highlight this guy. He's done that before. So they're going down there to win first and foremost. And everyone eats when teams win. But watch some of these guys that are draft eligible. And maybe in a mock, they're a tweener, late first, early second. Late day 2, early day 3. I think Deion Sanders wants Pat Shurmur to game plan some stuff, to put on a bit of a show for these draft scouts that are going to be down there, and there will be a lot of them. But that comes up on Saturday. We'll talk more about that game on the other side of the holiday. On the other side of this break, why Sunday could be Pat Surtain's magnum opus. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Christmas Eve. You can watch the show right now, if you so choose, on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. The handle is the same in all of those places, at XTRA Sports 1300. Broncos and Bengals on Saturday, and the biggest topic of conversation outside of the playoff clinching scenario that awaits the Denver Broncos if they can get the job done is how the Broncos fare against this Bengals offense that has been absolutely cooking really all season, but especially the last couple of months. That's what's kept them alive. The defense has not improved at all for this Bengals team, but their offense is clicking. Jamar Chase has a chance to pull a Cooper Kupp and win that wide receiver triple crown. And here's Sean Payton talking about the difficulty and not just facing Jamar Chase, but all the skill position players the Bengals have.
His balance, and I would say he's extremely strong. And hard to tackle. So that presents a challenge. And obviously, all three of the receivers have been playing well, along with the running back from Illinois. So certainly this team has found their stride when you watch them of late. And we're going to have to play one of our best games.
And, of course, T. Higgins presents some problems, as Sean Payne alluded to, and the quarterback that they're going to face is about one of the best that they will have faced all year in Joe Burrow, obviously. But here presents a chance, and I remember talking about this game when it came to Pat Surtain's Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. Right now, Nick Benito has entered the chat. Playoff clinching scenarios have taken a front page. Bo Nix is always there in the conversation, but Pat Surtain can still win Defensive Player of the Year. And weeks ago, I said this could be that game. If Pat Surtain were to lock down Jamar Chase with a playoff spot on the line, that would be significant, I would think, in the eyes of Defensive Player of the Year voters. And there hasn't been many wide receivers that Pat Surtain has gone up against that could influence such a decision like going up against Jamar Chase, because quite frankly, there's not that many of them in the league. There are a lot of good receivers in the league. There's another level, and it's inhabited by, right now, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. You probably throw CeeDee Lamb in there, but look, in his quarterback being hurt, probably part of it, but Tyreek Hill hasn't played at that level. Cooper Kupp, because of injury, hasn't played at that level. But it's Justin Jefferson, it's Jamar Chase. They're the class of the NFL this year when it comes to wide receivers. Broncos haven't played the Vikings. And that's why I say this could be Pat Surtain's magnum opus. All these analytics that are being thrown out there, all of these stats. I saw one today that quarterbacks would have a better passer rating throwing it into the ground than throwing it at Pat Surtain. Well, here's your chance. Defensive Player of the Year, magnum opus, whatever you want to place on the line, Pat Surtain has that chance on Saturday. And Pat Surtain trying to, not minimize the matchup, but perhaps not make it a bigger deal than he feels it needs to be.
They're pretty good, pretty efficient. You could tell that they play well off of each other. They use them in different roles. Obviously, they both good receivers at the end of the day. So it's going to be a challenge for us that we're going to be prepared for.
And T. Higgins keeps getting looped into it, and for good reason. But Surtain versus Chase, that's what the people want to see. And there have been times this season where having a lockdown corner like Pat Surtain would really help the Broncos, and they did not use it. Cleveland. This is what Pat Surtain is for. Because as much as I say there's only a few guys that you could say are that upper echelon of wide receiver, and Jamar Chase being one of them, there are only a few of those type of corners, and Pat Surtain is one of them. Why do you have a guy like that if you're not going to trust him to match up with Jamar Chase? Now, there's always ability to adjust. If Pat Surtain isn't up to the challenge, then make your adjustments before they're too late. But put Surtain on Chase. This game is that important. Best players on best players. That's what the occasion calls for on Saturday. Put Pat Surtain on Jamar Chase. And what will help that, and I don't know if the Broncos are going to, if they're going to have Pat Surtain chase Jamar Chase around and shadow him and move across the line with him. But Riley Moss looks like he's going to play on Saturday. Broncos just released the injury report, and Riley Moss is participating in practice. To me, if you want to give Riley Moss, coming off of injury, some help over the top on T. Higgins, then that's fine. But to me, best on best. That's what a game like Saturday is decided by. Best on best. Whose best is better? So I start with Pat Surtain on Jamar Chase and give him that opportunity. And if Chase burns him, then you make your adjustments. But we've seen Pat Surtain go up against some of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and everyone talks about the Devontae Adams games. As well they should. We have a lot of them. It's not a one-off. Those two battle to about a stalemate every time they go up against each other. If you're telling me that putting Pat Surtain on Jamar Chase gives the Broncos an ability to cut Jamar Chase's production, whatever he would have, in half, I take that every day of the week. We'll see how the Broncos approach it, whether they're going to be a bit more cautious. But to me, Surtain against Chase, that's what it's got to be to start that game. And Riley Moss on the other side, give him a little help on T. Higgins, who physically might be at an advantage over Riley Moss. That's the way I would play it. We'll see if Vance Joseph does that on Saturday. Now, there is the other side of the football. There will be times where the Broncos offense goes against the Bengals defense. It's not just the Bengals offense against the Broncos defense. And if it is, then there's a problem. We don't talk about weather a lot when previewing a game, but this week it feels like we need to, because the weather forecast does not look great for Cincinnati here's Sean Payton comparing, because you remember the last time the Broncos played in the rain, it didn't go so well. Sean Payton says there will be a big difference between this game and the Jets game.
We didn't have a strong indication of rain, and all of a sudden, it showed. So hopefully, the preparations this week will be ready for it. Obviously, the biggest thing is the balls. Is it actively raining during the game? And if it is, how are the officials covering the, those are all things you have to deal with. And then you also have to deal with how that might impact your play calling and what you're doing schematically in all three areas.
That last part is important. And what Sean Payton says about the rain is absolutely right. The Jets were not expecting it to rain like that. So both teams are going to be more prepared than the Jets and the Broncos were way back when. But the last part that he said there about adjusting the scheme, when I see potential heavy rain, I can't think of a better environment to run the football in. Right? And coming off of the Charger game, where the Broncos abandoned the run at two crucial junctures of that game. End of the first half, and with about 6 minutes to go in the game, the running game was necessary, and Sean Payton abandoned it. And I think it cost them. The way that Audric Estime ran the football to begin that game, and he gets 4 carries in the second half, that shows me that once that free kick went through the uprights, there was a little bit of panic from the Denver Broncos. Audric Estime got 4 carries the entire second half, as well as he ran the ball in the first half. Now, it looks like Jaleel McLaughlin, if you trust ESPN Fantasy's projections, he's projected to have points this week. So you get McLaughlin, who is running the ball better than anybody before he got hurt. And now you have Estime, who ran the ball extremely well in the first half against LA. You have a chance to really establish none of these guys alone are enough. Right? That's been proven throughout the year. None of these guys alone are enough. But if you have all 3 of your backs, including Javonte Williams, and you could kind of ride the hot hand, see how it goes, just like they did against the Chargers. Right? Opening drive. Saw some Javonte Williams. You saw some Audric Estime. You even saw some Blake Watson. Mix it up early on. We know Sean Payton likes to do that with his running backs. See who's producing and who's not, and adjust accordingly. Not by abandoning the run. I think the elements are going to force Sean Payton to stick with it for better or worse. But if there ever was a week for the Broncos to dig their heels in and commit to the run game, given what happened against the Chargers and given the weather forecast, it would be this game. And we'll see if the Broncos stick with the run. They just have seemed to, it hasn't been great, right? It's not like they're leaving just this unbelievable running offense on the table and abandoning it. Like, there are some indicators that maybe the run should be minimized. The run game hasn't been sustained through 4 quarters. So I'm not saying that Sean Payton hasn't had some indications that maybe he should adjust his play calling as the game goes on, but the Chargers didn't feel like one of those games. Bo Nix was struggling. The Chargers were repeatedly getting pressure on him. They ran the ball well. They should have stuck with it. And Sean Payton may have no other choice. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, while Nikola Jokic was putting up 37 points in 3 quarters and taking a little snooze in the final 12 minutes, Joel Embiid was taking even a longer break from play last night. Why? The comparison between Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic is going to become more comical the longer we go on. So last night, while the Denver Nuggets were beating down the Phoenix Suns, there was a game that got really wild with the Philadelphia 76ers. So there's kind of two stories, but they're intertwined in all of this. The officials for the game completely lost control. It became chaos. So the impetus of all of this is that Victor Wembanyama looked to have tripped on his own feet and fallen down. A foul is called. Technical foul is assessed on Andre Drummond. He gets tossed from the game, and they have to bring him back because there was no foul on the play. He literally went to the locker room and came back. They summoned him back onto the court, rescinded the technical foul, took away the free throw that was made because of the technical foul. So that was wild in and of itself. But then you had Joel Embiid. And Joel Embiid got frustrated with an official and got a technical. Deserved technical. Unlike Andre Drummond. But did not relent. Kept going after the official. And it ended up getting tossed. Now, there's a whole nother side of this that she was a female official. And some have commented that Joel Embiid can't do that because that's a woman. You can't go like you're going to fight a woman. I would actually like to look at it as you should not be that way with an official of any gender. Right? Where it looks like you're getting ready to punch them, that's not a good look no matter what the gender of the official is. Having to be restrained by your teammates to avoid attacking an official, I don't care if it's a man or a woman. You don't do that. So Joel Embiid completely lost his mind. That was game 8 of his season. He's played in 8 games and he's getting tossed. Like, it's been a struggle enough to get Joel Embiid on the court. He's finally on the court and he's ejected. It just, the juxtaposition of what two players that were supposed to be forever linked went through last night. And Nikola Jokic gets upset at officials. And I think he takes it too far. But very rarely does he need to be restrained. And he never gets I don't remember the last time he's been sent off because of his interaction with an official. He and Luka are two peas in a pod. They will whine, they will complain, they will gesture, all the gesticulations, and I think he goes too far sometimes. I think Nikola Jokic does complain too much. But he doesn't get thrown out. Once he gets teed up, he goes. Once the referee gives him that, okay, that's it, he stops. And most NBA players do. Joel Embiid did not last night. He absolutely lost his mind. And in a moment that felt like it wasn't about that game. And the referees deserve a lot of blame because they lost control of the game because of their poor decisions. But you can't act that way if you're Joel Embiid. And I don't even think it was about what happened in that game. I think Joel Embiid is facing the reality that it's just he's never going to be what people want to make him to be. He's just never going to be that. Because of his body primarily. My criticism of Joel Embiid, the player, is not his talent level. It's that he has a reputation of coming up small in the biggest moments. That's my criticism of him. I get the guy's talented. The guy can be dominant. But he shrinks in the biggest moments. That's my criticism of Joel Embiid. But most of this is his own body letting him down. And the other day, he gets like hit in the eye and like injures his sinus cavity. Like, athletes throughout history that have just had the worst luck when it comes to injuries. That has nothing to do with Joel Embiid taking care of himself or not taking care of himself. A lot of his injuries, maybe you could chalk up to that, not getting elbowed in the face and breaking his nose. Like, that's not on him. But he has these things happen to him. Right? Last year, where he came back from injury and then someone fell on his leg. Like, a lot of this is bad luck. But you could, in that moment, you could just see, with everything, all the backlash he received by saying he's not going to play the second night of back-to-backs and in this constant comparison to Nikola Jokic, I think it's all getting to him. And it just serves as a reminder, like, don't ever listen to an athlete that says he doesn't care what people think about him. Now, do athletes care about what people think about them as much as like I do? No. They're much more or much less mentally fragile than I am. But when you have hundreds of thousands of people who are saying something about you, yeah, a couple of those barbs get through. So when an athlete says that they don't care or they don't read it or whatever, it's one of the biggest lies that athletes will tell you. Because they do. They're human. And they're getting bombarded with thousands of tweets. And they turn on the TV. They might be sports fans. Well, you can't be anymore because if you turn on First Take, Stephen A. Smith is going to be destroying you. Now, they're able to compartmentalize it better than the average person. And given the amount of hate that they receive, the amount of criticism that they receive, it's actually quite remarkable that we don't have more NBA players pulling a Ron Artest and going into the stands. But it does get to them. And last night, it looked like the weight of all of this is getting to Joel Embiid. His mortality in this game. He wants to be one of the best ever. If not, why is he even doing this? Right? Of course he wants to be best ever. Nikola Jokic wants to be the best ever. Is it the main thing that drives him? Is it third on the list, fifth on the list? I don't know. But trust me, Nikola Jokic wants to be the absolute best at what he does. So does Joel Embiid. And when you're getting as much criticism and your body is failing you, and you're failing as much as Joel Embiid has over the years, maybe you reach a breaking point, and the match that lit the fuse perhaps was a game that got out of control with some poor officiating. This is not going to be like, look at all these great players that Michael Jordan ran through. Like, a lot of people's history or a resume or legacy is less than because of Michael Jordan. Certainly, Joel Embiid will not stack up to Nikola Jokic. But he'll fall well short. Like, it won't be, the talk won't be in a world without Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid would have been the best big man of his time. It's going to be, well, if that, and if he wasn't injured, and if he performed better in the playoffs, and all these, and if. He's just not. There was a couple of seasons where the two of them were jockeying for the MVP, but the longer we go, the more it will be a bordering on preposterous notion that Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic were in the same class. And some of that's not Joel Embiid's fault. And some of it's a credit to Nikola Jokic and how great he is. But some of it is Joel Embiid. 8 games is all he has played. Think about how much basketball has been played. Joel Embiid was on the floor for just the 8th time last night. And he absolutely loses his mind and gets thrown out. Can't happen. 719-247-1313. Take a break. The debate over the college football playoff rages on. The just idiocy of all of this. And I'm not calling any one particular player or one particular person, but just when you zoom out and look at the picture of ESPN essentially trashing its own product, it's just, that's idiocy. That and why the dream scenario for Kirk Herbstreit and maybe the ESPN network will never happen. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. The discourse surrounding the college football playoff continues. And here's the thing. You know, Kirk Herbstreit was on the Pat McAfee show today, again, talking about the difference between the teams that deserve to be in and the best teams. And he has been the face of this argument that Alabama should have been in, and the product this weekend would have been better if, you know, they would have just taken the best teams instead of the teams that quote unquote deserved it. Here's the thing. When it was 4 teams, you could do the best, right? Because it was only 4 teams and there was no guaranteed slots. Everybody was in the same boat. This utopia that Kirk Herbstreit and others are dreaming of, it's never going to happen as long as you give out automatic bids. This is the same argument that has been raging on in NBA circles for years. Right? When the East was so bad and the West was so good, why don't you just take the top 16 teams and go? Even then, there is a bit of a deserved aspect to it. But just this idea of no one is guaranteed necessarily anything. Just because you're one of the top 8 teams in the East doesn't mean you're going to get into the playoffs. Right? Truly trying to take the best teams. The NBA's been arguing for that forever. And it's popped up in the NFL, right? When the Seattle Seahawks went 7-9 and won their division, why should a division winner get a spot? As long as you are giving out automatic berths for winning a division, or you have a set number that you have to satisfy from one conference or another, you're never going to get truly the best field. You're never going to get that. So 4 teams, okay, because no one's guaranteed anything. Right? They're never going to go for 4 group of 5 teams, but theoretically they could. If Air Force and Boise State and Army and Navy were the best 4 teams in America, they would all get to go regardless of their conference. When it was 4 teams, it's easy to do the best team. And that's why FSU stayed out, because they're like, well, that wouldn't be one of the best teams without Jordan Travis. But now that we've expanded, you can incorporate the deserved. Right? You could give automatic bids. I don't have a problem with that. But as long as you're giving out automatic bids, you're probably never going to have truly the best 16 teams in the nation, because there's always going to be a conference that's down. You're always going to run out of spots for, and let's call it what it is, the SEC. So this utopia that they're trying to dream up, it's all well and good, but the mechanisms in place, and maybe one day they can help fight to abolish automatic bids. Now, I've been telling you, college football one day, and it's going to happen in my lifetime. It's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten. And that's going to be major college football. They'll poach some more from ACC and from the Big 12. And there will be 2 tiers, and the SEC and the Big Ten, it'll look like the NFL. There will be X number of teams out of one, X number of teams out of the other, and they'll have their own, and they'll be able to say that this is a superior form of college football. It's going to happen. That's where we're going. But until then, you're never going to get the 16 best teams. So you're going to get the teams that deserved it based on the mechanisms in place. Go in, for example, if the NBA playoffs started today, only 7 teams from the Eastern Conference would be in, 9 from the West. In the NFL, if the season ended today, Tampa Bay would not make the playoffs despite leading their division. The NFC West would get 2 teams. It would be LA and Seattle. So more years than not, you're going to have a team that for different circumstances gets left out that you could say, you know what? They're better than that team that got in. But here's the other part with all of this. You know, all these tech companies are coming in and buying up the rights to all of these live sporting events, and regional broadcast networks are being crushed and going bankrupt. And it's the new wave, right? Amazon and these tech companies with an unlimited budget just buy up NFL games, NBA games, NHL games, and they don't even bat an eyelash because they have so much money. And these networks are being squeezed out. Here's why ESPN, I don't foresee a day where it would be phased out. And it's not just because of brand recognition, right? There's something to be said for that. That if you're a sports fan, chances are you consume ESPN. But ESPN has done a phenomenal job of creating their own content out of nothing. They're very good at this. Once Kirk Herbstreit, and I didn't think he was one of these people, but now I'm starting to wonder. When he went on the game the other night and said what he said about First Take, I don't know if he intended to do this, but I know that as savvy as Shannon Sharp and Stephen A. Smith are, they heard that and they said, oh boy, can we get more content out of this? So then you have this feud, Kirk Herbstreit calling out First Take and Shannon Sharp acting like, oh, hold me back, hold me back. Like, I like Shannon Sharp, but sometimes he's, well, just like when he was a player, there's a lot to like about Shannon Sharp, and then sometimes he goes over the top, and you're like, come on, dude. But now you got this Kirk Herbstreit versus First Take rift. Tune into First Take tomorrow morning when Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp go at Kirk Herbstreit, answer what Kirk Herbstreit said after he called them out. And then you get Paul Feinbaum, who stokes these flames. And they can exist within themselves. They create their own content. So the content that they were originally going to deliver wasn't good enough for them to get hours out of it. Right? They couldn't get more content out of it because the conversation about these games is 5 minutes long. And that's it. There's not much to discuss, not many angles to take. You can't talk about firing Ryan Day after his team just boat raced their first round opponent in the college football playoff. So what do? You start questioning your own product. That's why ESPN is never going to go out of business. They can trash their own product and yet still come out ahead because people are watching and talking about Kirk Herbstreit saying that he would rather have the best teams. They're taking a flamethrower to their own product, but actually improving their product or presenting another product that is consumed. They have taken the college football playoff, which you don't want to talk much about, the games themselves, and they have said, well, here, talk about this part. And now going into the weekend, going into the second round, are we going to have more blowouts? I mean, they're great at that. And I'm not I can, disagree with what Kirk Herbstreit says, and I can look at First Take and Shannon Sharp and have my eyes roll out of the back of my head listening to them talk. But it's how they survive. Even when it's their product that is bad, they find a way around it to create a different product that you will consume. And that's what they're doing right now. That's why Kirk Herbstreit's showing up on every show. Not to break down games, but to defend what he's been saying and to parrot the same thing. Kirk Herbstreit hasn't changed one word of his plea for 3 days. But he just goes on a different show, says the same thing, goes on this show, says the same thing. So that's part of this too. ESPN creating that echo chamber. And look, we're all in this business. Like I said, I'm not knocking it. I don't love parts of it, but overall, it's the way sometimes you got to do things. You got to argue with yourself. You got to take shots at yourself. Now, I don't do that because I'm too mentally fragile. And if I said anything negative about myself, I would be deeply wounded. But other people more accomplished in this business can do that. Like the people on ESPN. Borderline genius, if you really think about it. But here's the thing. Whether it's all, to use a pro wrestling term, a work or whatever you want to say, the practical matter here is that as long as you are giving out automatic bids to anybody, there is a decent chance that you will not end up with the best field in your playoff. And you weigh the two. Do we truly want the best 12, 16 teams? Depending on the sport, 14 in the NFL, do we want truly the best? Or do we want to make certain things like what conference you're in, what division you're in, winning your division matter? And every once in a while, it's going to look really bad that a 7-9 Seattle Seahawks team gets in. And I know it's not the best example because they did win a playoff game, but they were in no way, based on the regular season, one of the best teams. When it was just 4 teams, I'm all about the best. Give me the best games you possibly can. The best teams, best matchups. And even then, they fell short. Right? Remember Georgia TCU? That one was a laugher. And I think general consensus was TCU is absolutely one of the best teams in America. And that game was terrible. So part of this is it's never going to be perfect, but even if you want to try and say, you know what, it's just going to be the best teams. Based on whatever metric you see fit. A committee, the NBA is based on record. As long as you're giving out automatic bids, but I'm okay with the trade-off and expanded field. That's part of why we love March Madness, is because the week leading up to it, we're tuned into the Horizon League final to see what team is going to be a 12 seed. So we can act like when we fill out our bracket, oh, I know a lot about this team. Winthrop? Oh, let me tell you about Winthrop. So the one game that I watched, this is what they did, and I'm basing my entire prediction on the bracket based on what they did in the one game I watched. That's part of what makes March Madness great. Yeah, it comes at the expense of a better team. But we're all okay with it. And maybe one of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to grow to be okay, with balancing the access with, are we truly getting the best field, or the SEC and the Big Ten are just going to squash everybody else and create their own. And because what we're talking about is the best teams being the SEC and the Big Ten, they'll just play each other. And then a whole lot of other teams will be left out. I do hope the games get better for a lot of different reasons. That being one of them. But the biggest thing is I really want to watch this college football playoff and invest, and I can't when a team is up by 20 after the first quarter. Want to tell you about QC Kinetics. You're probably perhaps finishing up, looking out for other people, right? That's what tomorrow's about, is doing things for other people. And that's great. But don't forget to do something for yourself going into the year 2025, and that's addressing that chronic joint pain that you've been dealing with. If you've used steroids, if you've done surgery, taken pain pills, none of those offer what QC Kinetics offers. And that is a way to attack the root cause, and a natural way to attack the root cause of your joint pain. These other things, they're just masking pain or just maintenance till the next time you need to go under the knife. QC Kinetics is offering something truly revolutionary, and people are starting to catch on. Tens of thousands of satisfied patients are raving about their results, many of them right here in Colorado Springs. So imagine a new year without that chronic joint pain. Nobody tomorrow is going to get you a gift better than that. So call for a free consultation, 719-347-1988, 719-347-1988, QC Kinetics, 719-347-1988. I hope you very much enjoy tomorrow. And even if you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you enjoy tomorrow anyway, because everybody deserves to be able to enjoy a day of the week. But enjoy it. I'll be back on, what would that day be? Thursday. We'll get more into the Broncos, obviously be talking about the Nuggets Christmas Day game. So, Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Enjoy the rest of your evening. JR Sport Brief coming up next.